Okay, welcome to Conversations at the Kaya. This is episode 10. Sama ni aje? Muha kumi?
Kumi bila break.
Kumi bila break.
For us.
Kumi bila break, exactly, for us. Yeah. We'll be talking about Agentic AI, its use cases in Africa, how basically African companies can adopt Agentic AI and how they can operationalize it, and also some of the things we are building here at Base Consulting. So we'll start with introductions first.
Hi guys, James, member of technical staff at Base.
Mohamed.
Amos, AI enthusiast, engineer, expert, anything. We'll be leading, or rather James will be leading that conversation, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Amos. I think we can go direct to it. We can start. So the first question is, what's the difference between what is Agentic AI and what's the difference between Agentic AI and the traditional AI ML? Okay. Maybe you can start with your Mohamed.
Okay, so like I mentioned before, I grew up watching a lot of movies, and so the first time that I interacted with the word agents was when people used to talk about
Minority Report.
Sorry?
You know Minority Report, the one by what's his name? The guy from what do you call this guy? Tom Cruise. Yeah, Tom Cruise. Minority Report.
Maybe not by name, but I may have watched a lot of movies. But Russian agents, US agents, and all of those. And so the simple definition, when you look at that context, is basically a person that is there to act on behalf of his government, his or her government, and they're there to collect as much data as they possibly can. They might not be doing the direct collection. They may have an intermediate person that they're bribing so that they can get that data. In which case ours will be application programming interface, APIs. They have many ways of collecting this data, and then they reason about this data, and then they perform certain actions within that country, so that they can achieve the goals and objectives that were set for them. And of course, as they do this, they have to learn from all their previous missions and improve themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's the analogy that I like to use. At least that's how I understand agents. It's the same concept when it comes to the digital world. An agent is basically a digital entity that has the ability to gather data. Mm-hmm. If they have the ability to gather data, really, you immediately are, eliminated from being defined as an agent. And so the multiple ways that you can collect data in the digital world is through the use of sensors, APIs, intermediaries, through the use of databases, etc. And you can act upon this data in the digital world. If we don't talk about robotics and we just talk about ones and zeros in a simple computer system, the only sort of actions that you can take is creating, reading, updating, and deleting. And so those are the same actions that an agent can perform. But before we go to those actions, we have the reasoning. And so that is, again, to answer your next question, what is the difference between traditional agents and, current agents, is the intelligence layer. So right now we have LLMs, large language models, that can generate what looks like reasoning. It's not really reasoning, it's just generating what looks like reasoning. And it is based on the inputs that were given to it. And so it can, based on temperature readings from the Kaya, and maybe other traffic events, is able to reason and say, I don't think I will drive using this route today, I'll drive another route. And that is, driving the route now becomes the action. So that's simply an agent. Sorry for the long conversation, but an agent, that's how I understand an agent. I
think you're right, Moha. And just to quantify what you've said, I'll speak from a historical lens. And we were discussing this just before, and we mentioned there's traditional AI, there's machine learning, and there's agentic AI. And I think you can go back to 2015, 2016, when machine learning was the big thing, and big data. And basically, a lot of companies were using machine learning models, which were models that were trained on a lot of smaller sets of data to do specific tasks or specific things. So, for instance, maybe Facebook was using an image classifier to detect if you're uploading an image of yourself that is nude, there's nudity. So they train a model with a lot of nude images, a lot of images of people dressed with clothes, and its work is just to identify, is this a nude image or not? And that was, of course, for moderation purposes and also for content control. You also have other kinds of applications, like if you are watching movies, where there was a voice recognition kind of model, a machine learning model that was trained on a lot of voices. It could listen to a voice and tell you, this is Mohamed, this is James, this is Amos, and that was it. It was just trained to do one particular task, and it had to use a smaller sets of data. Then we came into the second era, which was traditional AI now, when ChatGPT was launched, GPT-2 and then GPT-3, which launched AI to the world, really, language models running on transformers. And those were trained on large sets of language data. So they could be able to actually talk to you, respond to you in one turn. You could ask them a question, they would respond to you. You could ask them something else, they could respond. They could extract things for you. They could kind of translate things for you. They could summarize things for you. Just a few more tasks, but you had to conversate with it in a chat. And then came the breakthrough with React, where models could reason, execute or act, observe, and learn. And this was when Claude and OpenAI basically made their models start thinking or inferring. Basically, at inference time, they could think and reason and create plans. And also, they were given access to APIs, they were given access to sensors, they were given access to relays, so they could act on some information that they had. So they can pick information from a database, reason about it, create a plan, then send some response to an API, a payment API, to pay for the user if the user has told you to pay. If the user tells it, maybe I would like you to turn on my light, it can send information to a relay or a switch so that it can turn on the switch and all of that. So it's basically, it can act more, reason more, plan more, do more complex tasks, and keep learning about the user, and keep improving itself on many, many tasks. So that was really where we went from ML to traditional AI, then from traditional AI to agentic AI, where we had the reactive loops, plans, APIs, and all of these tools. And then now the model itself could learn on its own and make itself better on tasks.
Okay. So an agent is when we give these models the capability to do some task or do some manipulation on some external data.
Yes, and then to achieve an objective, as you had mentioned.
Okay. And what's the role of agentic AI in Africa, and what are some of the use cases?
Yeah, let me take that. So there are many ways that agentic AI can be used in Africa, and I think we need to think about the ways that are additive. Additionality is a very, very key metric for us as Africans, because we need to be very efficient with our resources. And I remember the podcast when we were talking about data centers versus energy access. I mentioned that there is an opportunity for us to do both if we are very, very clever. One of the ways we can do that is by least cost economic planning. As you can imagine, the scenario where the government itself has to develop a lot of projects, energy projects or agricultural projects, the Galana Kulalu project, other projects that they require to develop. But before they do that, they need to send people on the ground. There's operational cost to that. So they need to send people to the ground to do an assessment of what is the opportunity there, what is going to be the demand, the uptake, the market forces, the costs, the return on investment for that particular project. They have to do it, and they have to send teams, specialists, who have to be paid by the hour each time that they have to do that. And you can imagine they have to do that across the whole country, county by county, ward by ward, all of that, and determine which projects are best, have the highest return on investment. So let's invest in this particular project with the limited budget that we have. If we can find a way to scale that function, that would be very good. And we can do that with agents, because they can combine a lot of data sets, whether GIS data sets, terrain data sets, demand, population data sets, all of that, combine all of that, and then give you an instant snapshot of a particular project area. If it's a mini grid or a generation asset, look at how much it's going to cost, roughly the demand, the population, projected demands, the revenues that you're going to accrue from that, all of that, and give you a snapshot. And then the government can then look at a map of opportunities and decide, okay, this particular opportunity, this one, those are the ones we want to explore. And we don't have to send teams or operation people to go and do that. That is one case. Another case, we talked about the legal case where Ambassador Philip Figo and our team at Strathmore, they are actually trying to make the workflows of the judiciary judges and lawyers a bit faster. So they have meeting agents joining the meeting, listening in on the hearings and picking the information. Normally, traditionally, a judge would have to write all of that down or have a clerk who will write all of that down. And then there's a delay on when they're going to post that to the central database. But the agent can quickly summarize that, get that extract, send it to the database, and you're done. And now the net effect obviously will be, instead of you having to wait for 6 years for a petty case hearing or 7 years, you can wait maybe for a year or 2 years. You can even maybe more, and we'll have to see as Ambassador and his team to continue doing that work. So that is also a killer use case, I think. The other financial use cases that Moha is going to talk about, which are brilliant. I think there's one other use case, which is risk quantification. Similar to the risk cost planning, you have to send teams to do that kind of work. There's a power station, I think it's called Medupo in South Africa, which overran its budget by 193%. So 80 billion rand ended up costing about 193 billion rand. And that could have been seen if there was a system that was constantly checking whether there are risks, political, climate risks. The political landscape is always changing, demand risks, all of that. And telling investors or telling somebody, a project proponent, that this thing is risky. Yeah, so those kinds of use cases where we can put agents to see, plan, act, and warn us and give us outputs. I think those are the killer use cases for us as Africa.
So I want to take a slightly different approach and talk about how we don't use AI, at least in the benefit of all. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have seen it on social media, and there's a lot of AI generated content. I wouldn't say that's an African thing, that's just a world thing. And it is fake news. I can't, there's so many times that my parents have forwarded me an AI generated crime scene or protest or something. It's like, it is happening in CBD, but it's not really happening in CBD. So there's so many ways that on a personal level that we're using AI. One of them is to really imagine what this world around us, our cities, could look like. And you also see it on some government media. Sometimes they post like a proposal for how to develop maybe cucumber market, and it's AI generated, or how the expressway could look better or something, and it's AI generated. But they're also, I think it's helping on a personal level when it comes to education. So a lot of the students, all the way from CBC, is that the new curriculum?
Yeah, CBC.
They are using AI in order to have better understanding of the things that they're learning, get better examples, and sometimes it can be negative because they will use it in order to easily do their homeworks without putting a lot of effort and a lot of thinking into it. But other times they're given a very hard task, sometimes a physical assessment or a physical project that they have to undertake, and AI is there to help them figure out exactly what they need, what they need to buy, how they can go about putting together this project. Another way, on an organizational level, even at base, we use AI quite a lot in almost every business, in almost every process that we undertake. And it is to achieve or get the boring work out of the way. Let me put it simply. No one likes to do the repetitive, boring work, like centering the div and stuff. So we have our coding agents that we use to build applications that are used within the country and also outside the country. We use AI in order to proof check, like at least check the semantics, check any spelling mistakes and stuff. So on an industry level, some of the innovations that we are working towards, but also other companies have already worked towards, is almost the same: automating as much of the workflow as possible, and just having a human there as sort of a manager of an agent, and like a supervisor. So, for example, when you look at the insurance space, especially motor vehicle insurance, that's being done. So you no longer have manual assessment of vehicles. You no longer have manual assessment of damages to vehicles, and all of this is being done by AI. Not AI, really, agents that use some sort of intelligence, and it is quite efficient, and also spots things that maybe the other person will not spot otherwise. So yeah, a lot of use cases. I don't want to dig deep into exactly what we're doing. I think that's where you're headed. But yeah, you can also talk about, you have enough experience as to how.
Yeah, for sure. But you mentioned about some of the, so I think some of the challenges with AI generating those fake images, some fake news and all that. And here at Base, we have been building these agents and taking them to production. So maybe we can discuss on that. What are some of the challenges that we have been experiencing building agents and such stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if I said this already, but I think Mohamed and I have been building this thing for 3 years, James, over 2 years now. And together we've been building for about 1.5 years, and a lot of challenges do exist. I'll speak about the ones I can see. I think there's a data issue, there's an infrastructure issue, there's an energy issue, there's also an expertise and methodologies issue, and there's a trust issue as well. So it's data, infrastructure, energy, trust, and capacity or expertise. On the data side, obviously, a lot of Africa, I think about 14% of African data is digitized. So the other 80-something% is not digitized, which means we have a huge scope to actually just get data from paper, from people's heads, to actual records that we can then use to improve operations. So that is the very first problem, because without data, you can't really have an agentic system running with your own context. The second issue is on energy. I don't need to say much about this, because you saw President Ruto suspended the deal between Kenya and Microsoft, which was a $1 billion investment on a data center. And the reason for that is because we have an installed capacity of about 3.8 gigawatts, and that data center wanted 1 gigawatt. So that was, a huge demand, a huge kind of strain on the grid. And so the president had to suspend that deal, although it was a 2-year plan, $1 billion deal. So that's a big problem. On the energy side, we have on the expertise methodology side, we've done this for 3 years. We're still trying to figure out how best to standardize this methodology of operationalizing these agents. It's not even just about talent, it's about the methodology. It's quite difficult to do this because the scope is so wide. And trust, obviously the problem is when you do an agentic system, you introduce it to people, it fails, then there's a big problem, because the next time you come to them with the same, with another system or the same one better, they say no. And the problem is these systems cannot learn and be perfect the first time around. So there's a big issue on trust, on can it do this thing for me? What data is it using? What process is it using under the hood? All of that needs to be there, provenance. And then there needs to be a mindset where builders start with the annoying problems, and people also are able to embrace that and know that it's not going to be perfect the first time around, but we can keep improving. And I think there are other also challenges.
So let me phrase it slightly differently from an angle that all of us understand. When we talk, you talked about data, you talked about infrastructure, you talked about trust. So it's starting with infrastructure. So why is that bad? Money. So the reason why we're paying so much, burning through $100 on some days, while using Claude models and OpenAI projects is all because of infrastructure. If they could run those models without consuming so much energy, without requiring so much space and so many servers, I think it will be a much cheaper. It will be much cheaper. The same way that SaaS is very cheap. It still runs processors, it's still computers being used, but not as much as AI models need. So that's a major challenge for Africa, especially because I don't think we have that economic strength to pay for these models, especially not if again, when you're paying for them, you see, economics is about exchange of value. So you paid for this model, and this model, the money goes to the maintenance and of a data center, and that person, there's somebody in that data center who earns from you paying for this model, and then it kind of circulates and empowers your own economy. But that's not the case. All of our models are not being hosted in the continent; they're being hosted outside there. So even if we pay, we're not generating value back for Africans. We're generating value for OpenAI and Anthropic and other model providers and other data centers in the world. So second, data, of course, you've mentioned a lot of it is not digitized, and a lot of it is really not governed, not as well as Europe or other parts of the world. So what goes very well with data, of course, is a system that has generated that data and is really protecting this data. I would say most of the systems in our country and also outside of it are very fragile. And if you let an agent loose on these systems, it will create more harm than good. So a lot of data leakages and a lot of data manipulation that happens. I don't want to talk about corruption, but it's also part of it. I mean, every now and then we talk about Fungua servers because of the elections and stuff. Now imagine letting an AI agent lose in such a system. So lastly, data trust. Trust also goes hand in hand with like how stable are these systems, and even you need to have, you can't put enough guardrails on an agent, but when you think of an agent as a person, they can be manipulated, like they can be phished or something. They can be socially engineered to reveal things that they should not be revealing. So same way that organizations have been training their employees, look, do not be phished. If you see an email, don't just click on the link. But still, it happens from time to time. It happened to Yahoo, which was one of the big companies at that time. So yeah, are there other challenges? Yes, but those they almost are subsets of those three main challenges, at least in my opinion.
Okay. Great. I think one other challenge is when building these agents, like with a traditional software, we can easily be, as a developer, you can easily be able to write some test, and once that test passes, you know that your system is good. But now with agents, it becomes very hard because they kind of require new thinking about how you're building them. So I think that's another challenge, deploying them. How are you evaluating them? So I think that's another major challenge as well. Yeah. So moving on to the next, and are these agent or AI displacing human being? Sorry about that.
Should I go first?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So you said if they're displacing, or at least
human
jobs.
Yeah, that's enough.
So that's a very simple question, and it is a yes. Not entirely. It's not 100% replacing them, but they have introduced a lot of efficiencies, and it has happened before as well. Let's say, for example, maybe it used to take 2-3 people in order to heavy lift this desk. I'm pretty sure the people cannot see it, but in order to heavy lift this desk from here to somewhere else, but then cars were introduced or something, or maybe cranes were introduced, and buildings have become much faster in order to build, because you don't need a lot of construction workers. Rather, you have very simple machines that can lift things, that can do the heavy lifting. So the same way, in the digital world, there are some things that required a lot of boring and labor intensive and time, tasks that were taking a lot of time and that were really very boring and that were very routine. And so these agents have definitely come and taken that out of the picture. So what that means is they haven't fully replaced, I wouldn't say they have replaced the entire team and now it's just an agent, a team of agents. Rather, they've complemented the team, and they have removed the boring work from the picture. And so what happens is you no longer employ someone in order to come and do data entry for you. You don't come and say, okay, look, there's this PDF, I want you to extract the numbers in that and put it in this Excel file. You no longer employ such kind of people. And yeah, so it has completely replaced those. And also on another level, I would say it has set the bar high for entry-level positions. Again, you cannot be proud of doing manual labor. You cannot stand out just because you're able to create, in our world, a very simple website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. An agent can do that nowadays. So really, I don't need to hire you. Even an agent can do that for me in 1 hour. So now the bar is so high such that you need to be exceptional. You need to have like abilities that the agent doesn't, and that is really complex decision making and leadership and management of not other people but really agents themselves. And because you'll have a lot of responsibility on your head, because you have sort of some superpowers or some help from intelligent systems. But yeah, that's what I would say. Just replaced the manual, labor-intensive and boring work, but not the intelligent and complex workflows. Like Amos has just mentioned, one of the challenges with of adapting AI and agents into any African business and just in Africa in general is the lack of talent to implement this system, to maintain these systems. Yeah.
Okay. Amos, what are your thoughts?
I think I agree with Moha. But in addition to that, although the barrier for entry-level jobs has been raised much higher, I think it's also catalyzed the ability for these entry-level applicants to stand out even more if they know how to utilize these models or these agents, these AI, and also for the people, the incumbents who know functionally about how things work. So subject matter experts, we call them subject matter experts. They are very valuable in the short term right now, short term to medium term, because as we said, agents learn from executing, from failing, they learn from failure modes, they learn from feedback from human experts, and from their own loops. So from failed modes, from human feedback, and from their own executions as well. That means that in the short to medium term, the incumbents who are subject matter experts will be invaluable to understand workflows, to understand how things are done. And then thereafter, I think we'll know what to do, because obviously, as these agents automate some of these particular functions, I think one of the gaps that they'll have is in action. So what APIs have been created, what databases have been created, what sensors, what relays have been created, what kind of connections have been created, what can they do, what can't they do, and then what they can't do, perhaps humans can fill in there, and also robots. We'll have to see, but that's not short to medium term. That's in the longer term, and also some of the opportunity that will be created from the kind of planning that I was talking about, that kind of opportunity for people to come and to develop a project somewhere, some jobs for agricultural jobs, maybe operation and maintenance. Those are good things to also consider as positives.
Okay. Yeah, I think I don't really like discussing about whether it is replacing human in their job, because, as you said, in the short term, So maybe, are we going to reach super intelligence? And if that is true, like, what does it mean?
Yeah, I think that question deserves a podcast on its own. I honestly, I do think, and maybe we can do it. We can discuss what super intelligence would look like, what kind of world economy, relationships that would breed. Because you can then go to super intelligence and then robots and robots working also. What does that mean for us as humans? What do we then focus on?
Exactly.
And honestly, I think that's a loaded discussion. I don't know what you think, Moha. Naona tutakaa hapa tujiulize maswali sana.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah.
It's very. I don't think we've reached.
ASI,
yeah.
AGI, whatever they call it, artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence, whichever.
Yeah, because that will really require representation of a lot of real world entities to computers. Have we been able to even represent smell to computers? The sense of smell, have feelings, happiness, joy, anger.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they do say it's sentient, but I don't think so. I think it's just text. Like me saying I'm angry is not the same as me being angry.
Yeah. One important application you can see the differences is in legal. If an AI passes judgment on you, it may not understand the nuances of emotion, of what you smelled, what you experienced. And so it can't pass a judgment on you if it cannot perceive certain things like, feelings, state of mind, the sense of smell, maybe in cooking or in other kinds of industries. So there are certain things also I agree with Moha that we haven't figured out how to represent to computers.
I have a question. Sorry to go off script a bit. But do you think as youths, we'll be able to use AI in order to have significant change within our own countries? Because I always think that one of the challenges of AI and agents is really regulation and just these bureaucracies that are involved in setting up any business. And also like having social change and social impact on people.
That's also another loaded question, but you're right, Moha. There's a lot of I would call what you just mentioned bureaucracies, social tax, social capital, like the kinds of friction that you face because you need to acquiesce to certain agendas, to certain needs. You need to rub a few shoulders here and there. I would say that's a political kind of issue. And sometimes you have an agenda. I was having a conversation with Charles yesterday. He was telling me the projects he's running in Uganda, carbon projects, they're smooth because he just goes there. People complain about Museveni in Uganda, but he's given a very smooth kind of where when you want an agenda, when you want to actually develop the nation, then it's very easy because once the president and his cabinet say yes, you are going to probably do it. But if you come to Kenya and it's a democratic place, but then you come here, you want to implement an agenda to help people, to help the youth. After 2 years, somebody else comes in power. They have their own agendas. They have their own people who they need to, to kind of socially acquiesce to, maybe a cabinet, people that did some favors for them. And then that changes the whole ecosystem because now you have a different political agenda and it doesn't really matter all the technical work that you did. So the question then becomes, can AI standardize that so that, can we get to a point where agentic AI reduces the political risks that we face when we are trying to better our economy, our nation, our country?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a hard question, but I think we can get there if we can empirically prove that doing something is good for this government or for that government, for this person and for that person, for this organization and for that organization. If we can prove with these systems that this is a good agenda for the parties involved,
Yeah,
then maybe.
one thing that you've mentioned is really like the changing of agenda and the changing of objectives and goals. I think there's a misunderstanding that agents are there to do the best for the person, like to achieve the best goal for the person. They're not. They're just there to achieve the goal that you want. Whether it's bad for you or not, it doesn't care. Like even the coding agents, like if you tell it go delete that database, it's going to delete that database, or like go disrupt the user base, and like it will just do what you tell it to do. So it's not self-guided, and so also that brings in the question of can you really trust agents that are not your own, the agents that are developed by others and provided to you as a service.
Good question. It's a question between autonomy and standardization and structure, and like it's the good of the person versus the good of all kind of question, where can you trust an agentic system that has been codified and methodologized by some people to do the best for the country, or would you want to give your own input? It's a hard question again. Like I think
Into the hard question.
yeah, it's a really hard
Let's go
question.
back to script.
we what we can do is we can also tackle that. I think there's a podcast here for ASI as well as these objectives, because agents are there to plan and to achieve certain objectives. Whose objectives are these?
Yeah.
Is it you? Is it the organization? Is it your government? Is it the continent? Is it the world? Like whose objectives? I guess is the question. And who owns these models? I think if they're owned by Western people, then those objectives, those agendas, those goals are theirs.
Yeah. I think the conclusion is that agents are not good in themselves. Is the operator, and not just based on the instructions that you give, but also it does require a lot of work from you. Your accountant, for example, if we say in the real world an accountant is an agent, a lawyer is an agent to be like defending you in court and stuff. If you don't give them enough evidence or enough systems and bookkeeping, and like you're following the proper process, they'll not be able to manage your books well. They'll not be able to represent you in a court of law very well, because you have been not dishonest to them and stuff. So the same thing with agents. If you don't give them the data that they need, and if you don't guide them as much as towards the goal that you want to achieve, then they're no good. And I think this is something that I was mentioning yesterday. Like what he can achieve with his agent is not the same that was what you can achieve with his agent. One central agent, but the results are completely different. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can move to the next question, which is how is Base approaching this agentic AI and all that?
I think we can tackle that together with also some of the applications, the methodology as well as the applications, which I think is like the penultimate and the ultimate points. One thing that you mentioned, Mohamed, that I would like to address before we address now the methodology and some of the things that we're building is, I think we need a way to have shared context for the organization, for the country, and we also need a way to have context for you as an individual. So if you want your goals achieved, then that is dependent upon your context. If you want organizational goals achieved, that is dependent upon the shared context. If you want country objectives achieved, then it is dependent on that shared context that you have, that you've built, the knowledge base that you've built as a country. And that's complex, but I think that's the correct way to think about it. Like we can compartmentalize the context based on you, the organization, or the government. Maybe sometimes the family. I don't know if families will be using agents, but whatever that is. Yeah, so that's, and then now on the base methodology, it's quite so far. Well, how we do is we have the data layer. We think about agents having the data layer. Then we have the harness or the orchestrator, the agent, and then we have the application. And the application can really be anything. The application can be a website, it can be a mobile app, it can be a WhatsApp it's just a channel for the user to interact with the agent. So it could be WhatsApp, it could be Slack, it could be Telegram, it could be a mobile app, it could be a web app, anything, a desktop app even. And then, so that's the application plus the database where it stores the data. Then we have the orchestrator or the agent, which is some people call it also the harness. It's just all of the things, the tools that you equip your model with. Tools, what else? Skills. Skills are just methodologies for doing things. All of that, we put it in that layer. And then the data layer. The data layer is the most complex layer because you need a lot of the data for what you need to do. Over and above the model, you need data on, if you're doing risk assessment, you need data on a lot of risk domains. If you're doing project development, if you're doing finance, you need a lot of data on ERP systems like ERP Next. So many data sets, and you need to combine them, create knowledge graphs, relationships. We can do a podcast about that technically, but there's a lot on the data layer. So that's the methodology. Then I'll allow Mohamed to talk about some of the applications.
Let me allow you to go first, because you're the agent guru in Base.
So some of the I'll say like the use. I think you have talked about the architecture, but some of the use cases or some of how we are building them here at Base is, for example, our internal brain, what we were discussing yesterday, where all the challenges that you guys have been discussing about, like my context, your context, the company context, how should the agent be able to reference someone else's document and be able to make decisions from that. So we're building something on that. And the other use cases, for example, we have the grant writer, we have the grant finder, and so many others.
Yeah. So back to the methodology, with a good example of where we're trying to deploy agents to right now is to the business process of bookkeeping and being compliant. So the first thing that we try to understand is really, when it comes to the methodologies, what is the problem here? Can people not actually perform this workflow? If yes, they can there's enough expertise to handle your bookkeeping and accounting. Then the second question is, how long does it take them? So do you want to reduce the time? Do we want to reduce the cost? Like, how long does it? Like, do you always need a very senior person in order to perform this task? And the cost really comes down to intelligence, because the more senior or the more skilled person that you go for, it means you're going for this skilled person because they're very intelligent in making decisions, and they're very intelligent in finding problems and solving problems within this particular workflow. So that's the same thing that we're doing. Like, we understand the problem, we understand your data sources and your output needs, because again, it all comes down to CRUD, creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. And then we see what skills an actual person in this business process flow needs. So when it comes to accounting, bookkeeping, it is basically, can you do a reconciliation of statements? Can you, read a receipt and be able to tell how much you've paid for a particular service? Can you calculate your VAT? Can you calculate withholding tax? If you like all of this, they're the skills that people take 4 years or maybe less in order to understand process flows. So when you're doing an accounting major, that's part of what you're doing. Of course, more than that, entrepreneurship and maybe some creativity. And so we understand what is this that can be done by an agent, that requires the agent to basically do a couple of reading of from some sources, do a couple of calculations, and then can these calculations, can we get these calculations and tell the agent to perform these calculations? And where there is a decision to be made, what are the guiding principles for making this decision? So for example, if the agent's goal is to pay a particular employee, so the decisions to be made there are like the guiding principles are, look, you're paying this person if there's enough money in our bank, if it has reached the end of the month, and if they're still employed, something like that. So it's basically, again, the building blocks are, here are the data sources, here are the calculations that will be performed from time to time, and here are the guiding principles for how an individual will go about this, his day-to-day work, when it comes to this business flow. So you just calling upon these things from time to time. Sorry, I'm getting a bit too technical. And of course, there's always, the hardest part really is improving your workflow, because you're defining it. It's still a bit abstract. Sometimes it's a bit abstract. It's just in plain human languages, and that's what makes it even hard, because you cannot really, you could tell an agent, look, be nice, and it starts becoming overly nice, and by being nice it thinks that you mean do everything that the user asks you to do. Like if they ask you to read from a different person's content, then just go ahead and do that. So you have to you test it yourself, and then you evaluate it, and then you come back, refine that particular prompt again and again and again until, and by the way, you'll never reach 90%, 100% of a perfect system, and it is always being in the lookout for how your users are using the system. Of course, not getting into the data, but just how they're using the system, and spotting any bad actors in the system, and seeing how the agent enabled those bad actors to actually exist in the system, and also find their way, manipulate the agent. But yeah, I'll let me summarize it like that.
Okay, that's very good, Mohamed. I think we have come to the end of the conversation, unless you guys have something to add.
Yeah, not really. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It was quite philosophical. When you really think about all of the things that we discussed, objectives, workflows, how do you define them? How do the agents keep learning? Those are all like really important questions to ask about agents as we continue to implement them on the continent. I think the time is now. So this is a rallying cry for me to any person building agents out there. Please keep building them. Seek out people who have also built, because the thing about this thing is you need to have tried to implement so that you can fail, so that you learn from those failures, and then we consolidate all of that learning. It's kind of like we are learning exactly like agents. The talent itself is learning like agents. You learn by failing, and you implement, and then you document those learnings, and we keep trying to implement, because at the end of the day, if we don't do it, we're going to be left behind as a continent, and we definitely don't want that to happen, because we have a very talented crop of youth, and I think it is our time to really catapult ourselves to the forefront.
Sure.
I'll say, so one advice to myself, and this is something that we've discussed from time to time, is it might be very difficult to implement all the agents that you need at the moment. Maybe if you need a cooking agent, it might be very difficult to implement that agent right now at this moment. It's not because there aren't intelligent enough systems. It's because you haven't really prepared or positioned yourself in order to make the most use out of this intelligent system. So I would say starting, and we've already started doing this, is documenting your workflows as much as possible. Keeping data and recording data as much as possible, introducing systems into your life and into your businesses as much as possible, such that you will reach a point when bringing an agent into your workflow becomes very easy, because everything is like that. The hardest part to tackle right now is this data, and it's this lack of systems and this lack of documentation of exactly how the entire process happens. And yeah, so if you have that, we're happy to implement an agent for you in a week, I'll say.
Okay, I think that's all.
Thank you. Bye.
Peace out.